Hi, and welcome to the Take Back Your Home podcast. I'm Lee Waters, and I'm here today with Paul Lamborn of Tech Painting Co., which is a Richmond-based painting company. You want to introduce yourself, Paul, and tell people about Tech Painting Co. and how you came to be the vice president?
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's exciting to be here with this new adventure that you have going on here. Happy to support you doing it. But yeah, I'm Paul Lamborn, Tech Painting. Official title, I guess, is vice president, but just kind of do a little bit of everything. We're a residential painting company. We're a commercial painting company here in Richmond. And we offer different types of services to help homeowners and owners with their painting needs.
Yeah. Paul and Tech Painting Co. have been a sponsor this season, as well as Verve Home Furnishings, and we're so excited to sit him down and talk with him about some questions that I've had as someone that has paint in my life as a designer, and clients have, and I think anyone that owns a home or even some rentals where you can paint, everyone gets involved with paint at some point. But y'all do more than just paint. Can you tell us about some of the services that you offer homeowners?
Yeah, residentially we do interior and exterior painting. We do drywall repair. We do kitchen cabinet painting or any kind of cabinet painting, furniture painting. We remove wallpaper, we install wallpaper, and do some light carpentry as well, some decorative carpentry around houses.
So y'all really are a one-stop shop where someone could have, maybe a hole punched in the drywall from an angry child, and they want to have that repaired, and then maybe add in some moldings to that wall so that it's a little sturdier next time the anger outburst occurs. And then you can hang some wallpaper on the ceiling and really just, touch up the front door, do all the siding. You could do it all.
Yeah. That sounds very personal.
Okay.
Like you have had angry children.
I do, but there hasn't been any walls. Yeah, no wall holes yet, but we haven't hit adolescence, so I'm keeping you in mind.
Yeah, drywall repairs for sure. Even if there isn't a hole in the wall, there's always some kind of patching to make a wall look better before we paint it. So that's part of every job that we do. So we stick just to the painting. So we're not a renovation company. We're not going to do electrical work for you, but in the painting world, we do pretty much everything that you could ask for.
That's awesome. We have at Lee Waters Design used Tech Painting Co., and they are our go-to. We haven't been able to use them on every job, but every job that we have used them, we have been thrilled. And I know that that's one of the things when you read about your company on the website is that y'all say over 90% of your customers are return customers after their first job. What do you think it is about working or experiencing Tech Painting Co. that brings so many people back?
Yeah, I think when we talk to people about why they call us or why they like to work with us, a lot of time it's the attention to detail, the questions that we're going to ask. So when we come out there and do the estimate, it's we're really, from the experience of doing things incorrectly or correctly in the past, we're able to ask questions and kind of guide people down a path that would, get them to eventually what they want to do.
Yeah, I've always appreciated how upfront y'all have been in explaining just all the steps that are going to be taken given the nature of a specific project. Every step or every project requires something different. And I always like getting your very thorough breakdown on the pricing estimate, like all the steps that are going to happen with sanding and priming and patching and adding trim and to what walls, like what surfaces are these things happening. Maybe we're not touching the trim this time, but we're doing all these things to the drywall. So I've always really appreciated that because when working with clients and any homeowner that comes to you directly, they have their idea of what it means to hire a painter or a painting company. And then sometimes that does not align. Like they're kind of like, yeah, I can do it. And then they do it. And then the customer thinks this isn't what I was expecting. And so I always like that we get our expectations on the same page from the beginning. And sometimes I'll say, okay, the client wants to remove this line item, and then you send it back and we move forward. And I love that. And so I think that probably also is another thing that brings people back, is just knowing they're getting exactly what they think they're getting and that they think they're paying for. So I love it. Okay. What do you think people fear or maybe are worried about or have misconceptions about when they consider hiring a professional? Maybe they've DIY'd it in the past and they're like, oh, okay, I want to reach out, but I don't know. Like, what do you think keeps people
Yeah,
in the
I think.
place.
Yeah, I think it is probably cost is probably the biggest
Yeah.
thing because people don't know how much it costs or if they can afford it or
Yeah.
what they can afford or what they need to budget. So I think that is the biggest fear.
Yeah.
You know, when you're going from, you know, the evolution of life, right? Like
Yeah.
when we're younger, we do these types of projects and we get to a point where whether it's moving or painting company, you know, I'm not going to do that anymore physically. So I need to pay someone to do that. So usually not sure what is it going to cost. So that's where we can come in and kind of explain, you know, look at the scope, kind of ask questions and figure it out and then be able to tell them why it costs this much.
Yeah. Yeah. As I said, I have always enjoyed seeing the breakdown of why, like what the process is going to be that justifies that cost, because I can then take that to my client and explain, well, this is, you know, how much time it's going to take and all the things that they have to do. And they go, oh yeah, I don't want to do that. And so, and, you know, I think the other thing is sometimes it's about cost. A lot of times it's about a thing people don't even realize, which is they don't know what they don't know. And so they think, well, I could just do that. And sometimes you can, right? If you don't have any damage to your wall, and you maybe have been watching a lot of painting videos on YouTube, like technique videos, maybe you can do it. But I think it's just, is it worth it to you time-wise? And if it is worth it to you to save the money, because we get it, everyone's in a different financial place, we are going to go through some questions about maybe best practices, about paint and sheens and stuff like that. So, yeah, I think the most important thing to take away from that is it never hurts to ask, right? Get somebody to come out. Are you mad when people call you and they ask you to come out and estimate?
Nope.
No. So just give them a call and see. So you can't make decisions without information, right? So Tech Painting Co. can come out, give you information. Okay, so is there anything, sounds so random, but is there anything that you want to share with people about paint in general? Like the thing that people are always asking you and you can just put it to bed right now by explaining it to us, which sounds so open and random, but...
Yeah. I mean, I think it goes back to cost because people want to know what does it cost to do this or how much would it be to do this.
Yeah.
So that's probably the biggest part of it. And I know
it probably depends every single time on what the scope is.
Yep. Yeah, cost can change depending on how many paint, you know, how many rooms you're painting or what you're trying to accomplish.
How many types of paint.
Yeah, typically when people call us, we're going to start asking them questions about the project and what is included, what is not included. So we have a good sense of why you're doing it first, and then we'll try to get their information after that. But we need to know why the paint job's happening, because you could be we're trying to sell the house.
Right.
Or no, this is a house that we just bought and we want to stay here a long time. So it's a different type of painter. There's lots of different types of painter. They're all not the same.
Sure.
And probably the other thing that I would mention that comes up a lot is there's this paint and primer in one that Home Depot came out with a few years ago, probably like 10, 15 years ago. And not that I'm bitter about it. I did work at Sherwin-Williams for a while, but it's a very cool marketing technique. But it's literally just a marketing technique to get people to buy paint. There's nothing extra special about it. If you look at the back of the can, it's going to tell you in this situation you still need to prime. In this situation you still need to prime. So that's probably
or do two coats.
Yep.
Have you seen the one coat?
Yep.
Paint,
or one coat.
Yeah. I've told people many times, unless you apply it in perfect conditions with perfect application, which unless you're painting every day, probably not going to be able to do, you're not going to be able to get it in one coat and have even coverage. There's just no way. Like, because if you sit there and press the roller till there's not a drop left in it, you can't be like, well, it was one coat. You know, you have to do it in a very...
Most of our jobs are two coats.
Yes.
Especially if you're changing color. Now, if you're selling your house and you don't care...
Have the same color.
You can have
on
the same
top of
color.
the same
You just want it to be fresh. You can do one coat there.
Okay.
But most every other job's going to be two coats.
I think that was a great question that I didn't even ask. Is there such thing as one coat paint? Most of the time, no.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, so we'll get into our kind of rapid fire about different paint sheens and colors and performance. So will a paint color ever be the same if it was mixed in two different cans? So you go in one day and you buy a gallon, and you go back another day and you buy another gallon of the same color. Is it going to be the exact same color? Like the exact same?
Probably not.
That's what I thought. Okay.
So if you want more information about it, don't want to bore you, but
Yeah.
paint is made in batches.
Yeah.
Very large batches. And then it's poured into cans. So the one can could be a different batch. The tinting machine could be calibrated differently on,
or an extra drop falls
Tuesday.
in at the last second.
It could be 100 degrees and it could be 60 degrees, and that affects how
Your
things
mom
do.
could be mad at you. Yeah.
There's this thing that we talk about in the paint world that's called boxing. So what that means is if you're painting a room that you're in, imagine yourself in a family room or a dining room and you're painting that room and you need 2 or 3 gallons to cover those walls. You want to mix them all together.
In like a bigger 5-gallon
Yep.
bucket or something. Okay.
Yep. So that's called boxing, and that's done for a reason so that it all looks the same.
Consistency.
Yep. So if you go back and have to buy, an extra gallon of paint, it may not match exactly. You probably won't be able to tell, and you need to paint corner to corner. So that's
on
kind of
one
the
wall. Instead of doing little touch-up patch-like circles, just go ahead and do the whole wall, corner
Yep.
to corner. Yeah.
Yeah. So if people call us to talk about doing touch-ups, it's going to look like a cheetah if you try to do it, or if
Yes.
you've done it before, you've seen this.
Yes.
You've seen the cheetah look. So you can't really touch up paint. Some paint is easier to touch up than others, and I think we're going to talk about that later. But that's what we talk to people about. You have to go to corner to corner. So if you're at home or you're at home later tonight, you can look at the walls inside the room that you're in, and you can look from one wall to the other. They're the same color,
Right.
most likely.
Yeah.
Unless you have an accent wall, but they look different.
Perfect.
So same color, but look different, and that's all about lighting.
Okay. Let's pivot over to, I said, what is the easiest sheen to touch up once it's dry? So say we've still got that either boxed, quantity of paint, or we have just the original can of paint. What's the easiest sheen to touch up if you truly have just like a little hole, just put a little bit of spackle in there, let it dry,
Yep.
touch up.
Flat paint. So if you're not familiar with all the sheens, the basic sheens are flat, satin, semi-gloss. There are other sheens that are available, but flat does not reflect light whatsoever. So when you're talking about touching up, if you have a satin or a semi-gloss, that's what you're seeing is the light reflecting off of that extra tiny little layer.
Yeah.
Paint is thinner than a piece of paper.
Right.
So putting an extra coat in the middle of a wall, if it's a
Matters.
satin or a semi-gloss, you're going to see the light reflecting off of it, and that's what gives you that cheetah look.
Yeah. Okay. That's great. Okay. What is the easiest sheen to apply?
Flat.
Flat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A common theme here.
Yeah. Okay. So, what is your favorite type of base if you want flat? Because in my experience, like your basic flat paint or matte paint, we have oils in our fingerprints. And I remember once we had a client who you painted pretty much their whole downstairs, and we had the matte, very luxurious finish, and this client entertained a lot or entertains a lot, and so people are prone to brush up against walls, touch them, and there were some fingerprints, and this person said, I don't know what's wrong with the paint, there's fingerprints. So is there a good, can you scrub matte paint or flat paint? What kind of base do you like the most?
Yeah, so flat is the best, as far as appearance after it's been painted on, but it's the worst as far as durability.
Yeah.
So you won't really want to scrub flat. They make some, in between flat and satin, which are standard sheens, they make a matte finish, which is kind of a little bit of both worlds, where you can get some scrubbability and you still have a lower sheen. So it makes the wall look better. So
would eggshell be in there as well, like flat, matte, eggshell, satin?
Yep,
kind of like that?
That's how it goes. Flat, up to matte would be a little bit higher, and then up to eggshell.
Okay.
Yep. So there's no standardization with that.
Yeah.
Every company, Benjamin Moore, Sherwin-Williams gets to call them whatever they want. So, and they all have different levels of what they are. So definitely, flat's going to make things look good, but it's definitely not what you want if you have a lot of kids running around.
What about, so we're going to call out a brand, and I know you're not, no brands are sponsoring this, but Benjamin Moore makes something called Scuff X Master or something. Is that what it's called?
Yes,
Scuff X
Scuff
Master?
X, yep.
Okay. So is that truly scrubbable? Do you know? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So that could be one where you get the ease of application and touch up, but you're protected maybe a little bit more with scrubbing off fingerprints that are inherently going to show up.
Yeah, Scuff X, and Sherwin-Williams has one too. So all the paint manufacturers are working on that.
Do you know what the Sherwin-Williams one is called? Just to give people two options if they're a fan of one.
It's Emerald. So
Emerald.
They put it within their already existing line instead of calling it a different paint. So they just put the technology in there.
Okay.
And it does, at its simplest form, not to get too technical, it really just comes down to the sheen. So that those paints have a little bit of sheen. They may call them flat or matte, but that sheen is giving the washability.
Okay. Yeah. I think of it like if you like to paint your nails, you always have that top coat that is the sheen part, but it's also that protection. So this is kind of like the technology's in.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yes. Well, a lot of people listening, I think, will know. But yes. Okay. So
I do know that I have 2 young female children. So
yes. So you know, because one of my questions had been like, what is the best sheen for people with kids at home? So it sounds like eggshell could be a good one, or even satin if you don't have too many lumps and bumps on your walls. But if you have older walls, then maybe something like a flat or a matte that's got a scrubbable component, or just be willing to do touch up a couple times a year.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. If your walls, like you said, if there's an older house, we definitely want to stay away from the sheen because it'll show any imperfection in the wall.
And textured walls, I think, too. If anyone's listening, maybe out west, I know textured walls are more common out there. So probably flat for those too, just so you're not like so busy, right? The visual texture.
Yeah, and part of that is a personal preference. Some people like the sheen and like the look of it. But, you know, if you have an older house, you're going to see a lot of imperfections, some cracks, and the light's going to reflect off of it and show them off.
Yeah. Yeah, I go back and forth. I like a little sheen, but I also have a lot of art on my walls. So I feel like no one's really looking at the imperfections. So, yeah, I guess it depends on your personality. But if you tend to be more type A, I think flat or matte is probably the way to go, and just look for either Emerald at Sherwin-Williams or the Scuff X Master at Benjamin Moore. Okay, best sheen for ceilings. We've kind of touched on this because we've talked about the imperfections being highlighted by more sheen. And what a lot of people don't realize is the labor is more difficult to do, you know, a ceiling drywall than a wall, because you're like looking up. And so typically, would you agree that there are more imperfections in ceiling planes? And so if you do a higher sheen on them, you generally, if you want perfection, you're paying a lot more for the labor to like prime, paint, stand back, resand it, prime again, paint again. Like sometimes ceilings can take, if you're doing like a high gloss lacquer ceiling, I've heard it can take a month sometimes to get it right. So so if you see a ceiling in Architectural Digest and it has a mirror like sheen on the ceiling, I mean, that could be $10,000 to $30,000 maybe to get that, depending on how big it is and how much time it took.
Yeah. So there's a lot to unpack there. So definitely, like on a ceiling, we're definitely going with flat. And then come down on the walls. The sheen level can be flat, matte, or satin or eggshell. And then you go to the woodwork, and that's typically going to be satin or semi-gloss.
Sure.
So you get a higher sheen on the woodwork. It's not as expansive as the walls, and it's a harder substrate, so it's not going to show those imperfections as much. And that, you know, this kind of goes back what you're talking about to cost, what we talked about earlier. People want to know what things cost. So we can come in and paint, you know, a standard 20 by 10 dining room or 10 by 15 dining room ceiling, and it would only cost like $300 or $400 to paint that ceiling in a flat white paint.
Right, yeah.
Now, if you want it to have a high gloss, we are, just like you had explained, we're going to have to do a lot more prep work.
Right.
So that means more time for the people that are going in there to do it. They're going to skim it. And those things can cost at minimum $5,000 to $6,000. So
absolutely,
there's a huge difference, and it just is a matter of what finish you want on there. If you want a high gloss finish on your ceiling, you're going to pay for it.
Absolutely. Well, it's fun to talk about the possibilities, and just I think having data helps people make decisions. So I appreciate your explanations.
Yeah.
Okay, a few more questions. Do paint colors look lighter the shinier they are? So the higher the sheen, does that make a darker color look lighter?
No, not necessarily. I think it really all has to do with lighting. So
Okay.
everybody's house is going to look a little different. We could pick the same color and go in everybody's, your house and my house, and it would look different because the lighting, the natural light is different.
Yeah.
Where's it coming from? What's the light source? The artificial light? What did you choose? Is it down lighting? All these things are factoring. So as far as the color, the sheen, it's, the high gloss is going to reflect the light more. So that's what you're seeing, but it's all about lighting.
Yeah.
There's something called light reflective value. It's LRV. It's on every piece of color. So it goes from basically
flip it for a paint chip and you'll see the LRV rating there.
So that's light reflective value, and what that is telling you is on a scale of 0 to 100, 0 being black.
Black.
Does not reflect. It actually isn't even 0. It's like 6.
Yes. Yeah.
It's doesn't reflect light whatsoever. And then 100, which isn't actually 100, it's like 96, is white. The brightest white you can get, and it reflects light a lot. So the answer to both of those questions, color and sheen, is really just light reflective value.
Yeah.
So
yeah, we look a lot as a designer. We look a lot at the LRV. To try and help people understand how that color is going to feel. Because you have the color, but then, which is, is it red, yellow, orange? Is it red, orange, or is it orange, yellow? That's the color, but then how dark it is or how dark it's going to feel, that LRV plays into that a lot. And so sometimes someone will say, that color looks dark. And I say, well, look at the LRV. It actually is considered a light or even maybe a mid-tone color. It's not a dark color. It's not going to feel dark. You're just looking at it next to a white piece of paper, and everything is relative. And then, you've got all this great lighting in here, so it's really going to wash out even more a little bit. So, okay. I think we are going to wrap up here soon. So in my Take Back Your Home course, we have people that are looking to kind of reclaim their identities in their home and their sanity by organizing, coming up with a design plan. And some of that involves getting new furnishings and, choosing paint color as well, choosing wallpaper, window treatments, all that fun stuff. And so one of the things that we talk about is you might have a piece that's perfect dimensionally, might fit in the space, and functionally it holds what you need it to. So maybe it's a cabinet, maybe it's a server, a chest of drawers, maybe we could have that refinished. And sometimes when we think of refinishing, we think of just keeping, taking off the old wood stain and then adding on another one. But you and your company could do that, right? Mm-hmm. But you also, as a company, we've brought in dining chairs to y'all before and said, hey, can you give these a spray lacquer, which in my knowledge, means that it's a more durable finish than if I were to just put chalk paint on it or something.
Yep.
So can you explain a little bit for people the differences, maybe the most durable type of finish that you could put if you wanted to color on your wood or metal furniture and what the composition of that is? Is it oil-based? Is it alkyd? Is it a lacquer? What is,
Yeah, they make a lot of different types of paint. So, a typical wall paint that you put on your living room is latex paint.
Yeah.
So it's water-based. That's how they make it. It's, soft. And then lacquer, just as a word, means hard. So they make lacquer paints, and they're a lot more durable. So for furniture finishing and epoxies, these are things that finish a lot harder. Chemically, they dry differently. So putting something like knowing which product to put on the furniture like that is important. You wouldn't want to put a latex paint on a piece of furniture because it's going to chip and not look so good very soon after you painted it. So a big part of it is the prep work that you do on something like that. So some of the furniture that's out there is, it's obviously stained wood and it has a clear protectant on it. So that's hard for paint to stick to. So a big part of furniture painting is making sure you prep the surface correctly and get the proper adhesion. Otherwise, when the kids sit down at the table and they bang the chair, they're going to chip the paint.
Or their silverware.
Yep.
Ask me how I know. A lot of dents in my table.
Yep. I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah. Okay. So lacquer is a good one. And how do you apply lacquer? Do you spray it on? Do you brush it on?
Yeah, you can brush and roll a lacquer. Typically on furniture, we are spraying it. It's easier for us to do it, the application that way.
Seems like the most, if you know what you're doing with a sprayer, it seems like the most consistent way to get the finish, or the look that's the most consistent, durability wise the most consistent.
Yeah.
It just kind of has that factory finish look to me.
Yep.
And that's why we've come to y'all for that.
The spraying helps with the finished appearance. The product helps with that too. Some of the, they take longer to dry, so they'll settle a little bit better than like a latex. If you painted a latex, you would see brush marks and stuff like that. So that is a big factor.
And that's one of the reasons we've brought that stuff to y'all for our clients, is that it doesn't clean up with the soap and water like the latex. And I just think no client is going to want to sit there and use paint thinner
smell good. Yeah.
and deal with the sprayer, like all the tubing. So we're glad that y'all provide that.
Yeah.
It can really give new life to something that otherwise, you can take something that was old and make it look completely new.
Yeah. And oil is kind of like that too. It's not being produced much anymore, so you're seeing a lot of latex water-based paints, and that's the main thing. Oils were great back in the day. You put them on cabinets, they have a harder finish, so they don't actually fully dry. That's something that happens with oil, and it just continues to get harder and more brittle, and that's why you see it crack and kind of alligator. That's but we don't have to worry about that much longer, because they're really not making it anymore.
Okay. Interesting. All right. Well, I really appreciate your time and sharing your knowledge and, wealth of experience with our listeners and viewers. So thank you for the sponsorship. Thank you also to Verve Home Furnishings for being a sponsor. These are providers, service and product providers that we know and trust in the RVA area. So thank you for that. And we will see you next time on the Take Back Your Home podcast. Bye.